Thinking about buying a home in a community with a homeowners association? Before you sign on the dotted line, make sure you watch this video. We're diving deep into the hidden cost, unexpected restrictions, as well as the potential pitfalls that could turn your dream home into an absolute nightmare. But here's the thing, it's not all bad news. We'll also talk about the perks, the pros of a homeowners association, and by being in one might actually make it worth it. So make sure you stay tuned to find out if living in an HOA is right for you. As a real estate agent for 20 years, what I can tell you is that not all homeowners associations are created equal. In fact, there are some communities here in Huntington Beach where I'm located where I would never live in that community because of the homeowners association alone. But at the same time, I currently live in a community with a homeowners association. In fact, I've been on the board of an HOA. So when I talk about the things that you absolutely need to pay attention to, it's not coming because I read something online. This is all coming from experience in not only dealing with homeowners associations as a real estate agent, but also as a homeowner. So before we dive into today's video, I'd like to take a minute and ask a favor. Just keep an open mind when considering an HOA. Don't go into the process saying, I absolutely will never buy in an association because of X, or I have to be in an association because of Y, but rather take what I'm talking about today into consideration when deciding whether or not a HOA is right for you. And on top of that, one other favor I'd like to ask, if you find any value in my videos at all, do me a favor and hit that thumbs up. And if you support the work that I do here on the channel, please take a minute and subscribe. So at the moment in the news, there's a lot of talk about homeowners associations, especially if you live in the state of Florida. And one of the primary reasons for that is because of the condo collapse that happened in Miami just a few short years ago. And the reason this is making its way into the news again is because the state of Florida is now requiring any condo over 30 years old to essentially do an audit of the building to bring the buildings up to current building code. So anything that's over 30 years old essentially has to have an audit where building inspectors go through these properties and say, okay, building codes have changed since 30 years ago, and these are the improvements that we need to make to bring them to current code. And you're probably watching this going, I completely understand why they're doing that. But here's the problem. A lot of these homeowners associations don't have the money in reserves in order to be able to make these improvements. So guess what happens next? The homeowners association now has to pass that cost along to the homeowners currently living in the buildings. And they do this through special assessments. So let's say you live in a building where the cost of improvements to bring that building to current code is going to cost somewhere around $30 million. Well, guess what they do? They take that $30 million and they divide it by the number of units in the building. And in the case of the story that I'm talking about at the moment, yeah, this is a real life story. A $30 million assessment, basically meaning that each homeowner in that building had to come up with $134,000 each by a specified time period so that the building could continue with the improvements that were being required by the state of Florida. And in the case that you couldn't come up with the $134,000 in this case, you would get additional fines, additional liens. Even in some cases, the homeowners association might be able to foreclose on your unit, which in the case of the story that I'm talking about at the moment required the homeowner to actually sell the property because they didn't have the $134,000 just sitting on the side. In fact, in this case, the homeowner had to sell it for 42% less than he actually paid for the unit to start. So why exactly am I still saying that homeowners associations are okay? Well, I brought up this story for one specific reason, and that before you sign on the dotted lines, it's imperative as a potential homeowner that you read and review the homeowners association documents that are associated with that property. Typically speaking, when you're buying a property in a homeowners association, especially a condo, you're getting CC&Rs. You're going to get a copy of the rules and regulations. You're going to get a copy of the reserve study. You're going to get a copy of the budget, the minutes, in addition to some other documents depending on the homeowners association. And the reason these documents are so important is because not only do they tell you what you're able to do in the community, what the association is responsible for in repairing, in replacing if something does go wrong, but more importantly, it tells you the financial position of that specific homeowners association by looking at the budget. You can tell how much money they're bringing in every single year. In addition to that, you can see where they're spending their money. You can see how much money is left at the end of the year, how much they're putting into reserves to repair things that might be broken over time. And more importantly, you should be getting an audit a financial audit that is done every single year. At least here in the state of California, they're required. At the end of the fiscal year, a financial audit is done where a third party reviews the budget. They review the reserve study, and they determine how healthy the community is based on that information and how likely it is for the community to have to do an assessment based on where the current reserves are. Now, a moment ago, I mentioned the word minutes, something you should pay attention to. Every single month, or however often the homeowners association meets, they should be compiling minutes, what they discussed in that meeting. And before a homeowners association can ever raise your dues or issue an assessment, it's going to be something they discuss in the minutes of that homeowners association. So as a potential homeowner coming in, if you get a copy of the minutes and there's no talks of assessments, there's no talks of raising dues or any of that, then you're probably on the safe side, at least in the interim. Now, what I'll say is, from being a homeowner who is on the board of an association, our fiscal year end was December 31st. So as we got closer to the end of the year, that's when we would start looking at the HOA. That's when we would start looking at our budget. Do we need to change that amount for next year? Do we need to raise dues? Are we in a position to actually lower dues? In fact, I was on a board where we actually lowered dues 3 years in a row. Now, that's completely rare and something that I want to point out here. If you're buying in a homeowners association, chances are that HOA fee is going to either go sideways, which means it's going to stay flat, it's not going to go up or down, or it's going to go up. And understand, as inflation goes up, that means the cost of maintenance. That means the lawn care in the community. That means, the pool maintenance, whatever the community has going on, whatever fees you're spending, because inflation is going up, costs are going up all around. And if all of those costs are going up all around, guess what the HOA has to do? They have to raise fees in order to account for those rising fees. Therefore, you're likely to see HOAs continue to go up. Now, earlier in the video, I mentioned there are communities here in Huntington Beach that I would never live in because of the HOA alone. And one of the reasons for that is because there's an HOA here where every single year the HOA goes up. The fee goes up and up and up. In fact, I remember when that HOA fee was in the low 300s. It's currently, at the moment, sitting somewhere between $600 and $700 every single month between the two associations. Now, for some people, that doesn't matter. They don't care about that cost because they like the amenities of the community. But for me, as a bystander standing by, watching the fees go up every single month when I've been a part of an association where we were actually able to lower dues, as a homeowner, you need to pay attention to what the board's doing. You need to pay attention to who's on the board. Did they actually understand the fiscal side of things? Are they being responsible with the money in the community? And on top of that, are they putting money away for reserves in case something does happen in the community? Do they have the money to be able to pay for those repairs without assessing the homeowner some large amount of money? As a real estate agent, I've seen community after community over the years that were mismanaged, didn't have enough money in the reserves, have to do an assessment to the homeowners for things like fixing roofs, fixing decks, fixing balconies, all types of things. So before you buy in a homeowners association, just make sure you're reviewing all that paperwork. Just make sure you're doing your due diligence. You understand what you're actually getting into. Don't do what some of my clients do and just get the paperwork and throw it to the side without ever reading it. Make sure you're reading the things that are important to you. If you have pets, make sure you pay attention to the restrictions on pets in the community. Some communities have them, some don't. While some communities might cover the exterior of some buildings, roofs, the walls, whatever, other communities might not cover anything at all. In fact, I spoke to a potential seller just yesterday who was considering selling her property because the homeowners association came back to her and said that she needed to fix all of this different woodwork on the outside because they were getting ready to paint the buildings. Well, she thought that was the association's responsibility, not her responsibility, and therefore it put a bad taste in her mouth. And now she's considering selling the property because she didn't fully understand what she got into when she originally purchased that home. So just make sure before you sign the paperwork to become a homeowner in a homeowners association, you understand the potential pitfalls that we just talked about. But as I mentioned earlier, it's not all bad news. I actually live in a homeowners association, and I appreciate the homeowners association for the reasons that I'm going to talk about right now. They maintain the community. They make sure the neighbors' houses aren't garbage. The neighbor can't paint their house any color they want. Their trash cans have to be pulled in. They can't park their RV or their boat or whatever on the driveway. Now, for some people, you're going, Jeb, you're absolutely crazy. It's my house. I should be able to do whatever I want. I completely understand that. If that's you, you should probably not be living in a homeowners association. but rather I'm OCD. I like things cookie cutter. I like things clean. I like things maintained. And for me, a homeowners association keeps everybody on a level playing field, if you will. You're required to meet whatever the restrictions or the guidelines are in that community. Now, what I will say is there are some things I don't necessarily agree with in my current homeowners association, but it's not enough for me to sell my home and move. In addition to that, many homeowners associations out there have amenities, swimming pools, spas. In fact, the community I live in has 5 swimming pools, has a spa on top of a sauna, a sand volleyball court. It really has a lot to offer the residents. And if I were a homeowner with a single family home, I would have to pay to maintain that pool. I would also have to pay to maintain some of the things in the community that my association currently manages. So yes, I'm paying a fee to a homeowners association, but I'd be paying part of that fee to have the same lifestyle outside of the homeowners association. Therefore, I'm okay with it. In addition to that, many homeowners associations out there are gated. They also have security coming around the community, so if safety is important to you, and a lot of times because of that, HOAs will enhance the safety of a community because of gates, because of security, because of all of those things. Now, at the end of the day, you have to decide whether an HOA is right for you. But regardless of what you decide, there are types of properties that you should absolutely never buy, and I discuss them in this video here.